I'm skipping ahead a little bit because I'm trying to get to the beef here. Okay, so he says it starts with communication. Della Volpe said. Della Volpe.
Fucking God.
Della
Really?
Volpe.
Okay,
Della Volpe.
thank
Della
you.
Volpe.
You mean
It
the
starts with
political campaign involves communicating.
It
as a
starts
first
with
principle.
communication.
That's kind of wild that you brought that up, dude.
It starts with communication. Suggests regular check-ins to update them on policy progress, and citing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, disciplined cadence of Instagram posts as one example of this practice. Okay,
Hell yeah.
so it
I
starts
want to
with
see Steny Hoyer dropping it like it's hot on Instagram Live.
So it starts with communication. Then empower them, Della Volpe said. He noticed that Democrats can sometimes stand in their own way in reaching young people because they're intimidated. They get weighed down in the transactional nature of politics. Della Volpe pointed to the tack Biden took as he locked up the Democratic presidential nomination. Say, where do we agree with Bernie Sanders groups? Where do we agree? And what's the process to get there?
Well, isn't that, yeah, you can only really do that one time, though, right? Like, like they said it. And of course, like all of the center left pundits just like fell all over themselves because, they all said, look, even the ones who like were pro Bernie and didn't like Biden, they're like, look, we got to beat Trump. This is the most important election of all time. So we have to convince these rubes that Biden shares their values. And yeah, so everybody went all in on that. And it probably worked to an extent because people wanted it to work because they wanted to get rid of Trump. But now it's been 2 years that they've just been putting fucking cigarettes out in people's eyes for that entire time.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, I don't care how many voices you listen to. You can't undo that one. And like, again, as we said a million times, your first time ever seeing generous federal unemployment checks and then fucking mean old Brandon takes it away. Do a million surveys. That's not going to fucking help you.
And also, I mean, during the 2020 Democratic primary, all the other candidates had to pretend they agreed with Bernie. Biden probably won because he was the only one who just said straight up, I don't believe in anything Bernie Sanders stands for. I'm not for universal health care.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, so just
and then everybody decided to just pretend that didn't happen for the general because had to get rid of Trump.
Well, he
and then
killed
on the fucking ballot, the entire like spectacle of emergency is gone. And yes, they can say, oh, they're coming for us. They're going to get rid of democracy. But if you don't have Trump out there bellowing, it's just not the same thing.
I mean, what more does he have to do? He killed neoliberalism. Come on now.
So where do we agree with Bernie Sanders groups? Where do we agree and what's the process to get there? I mean, again, as the problem here is that they don't agree with anything that Bernie Sanders supported. And so there's no way to get there. So just keep listening, Della Volpe. He says here, Della Volpe listed a handful of policy areas. Oh, thank God. All right. Listed a handful of policy areas where potential executive actions from Biden would very quickly capture the attention of young people. The list includes student debt, mental health, climate change, and dealing with the rising cost of living.
Mental health? What?
In large part, they have been following up on these issues. But what? Like,
well, no, okay. Yeah. So every time, like the Biden diehards will do this. Like anytime that there's someone will be like, oh, they're not doing anything. They'll point to like an executive order that like usually does not really go as far as it could or maybe should, and go, oh, not doing anything. But it's, I mean, that's if like people who are online like 18 hours a day are going, have to be shown that. How are you going to get like people who vote maybe every other presidential election, or especially like 20-year-olds?
In large part, they have been following up on these issues, but it's about extending the conversation in new and different ways to remind people that we're not finished, Della Volpe said, citing as one example is Biden's announcement of a mental health initiative during his State of the Union address.
People can't stop talking about it.
I can't.
Every time I pass the Zoomers going around on their Beyblades, I keep hearing them talk about how fresh that proposal was. The one that I remember.
What is this? The mental health initiative? Okay, all right.
It's an initiative. What else you want?
It's an initiative to improve mental health.
They're taking the initiative on mental health,
and we need to. But the thing is, we need to continue this conversation in new and exciting ways, and check in with young people to know that, like, hey, that mental health initiative, we're still thinking about it.
Yeah, we're still absolutely thinking about initiating mental health. We will initiate mental health any day now. Just wait.
Major progressive outside groups, though, think Biden can go much further. Much further than the mental health initiative? Who the fuck are these people?
Yeah, what the hell?
Just come on. Like politics is the art
Be
of the
reasonable,
possible.
for Christ's sake.
Politics is the art of the possible, okay? And
Yeah.
announcing a major mental health initiative at the State of the Union address, I mean, what more do you want from him? He goes, they argue that he should cancel student debt altogether or work more aggressively on his climate agenda. Next Gen America's president, Christine Ramirez, says young people want to see action, and that's why we're yelling as loud as we can. Please take action on student debt, because this is within the power of the Biden administration. Last week, the Biden administration announced another 4 months extension of the pause on monthly loan payment and interest. It's been over a year of a Democratic trifecta, and young people are really disappointed because not much has been accomplished around student debt or on ambitious climate goals, said Ellen Scales, a press secretary for the Sunrise Movement. People are losing hope. Biden has turned his numbers around with young people before, a saga that may show a path forward for him in the next 6 months. During the presidential primary, Biden's numbers with young people were also upside down. At the time, Della Volpe took a group of students to Charleston to conduct a focus group in February 2020, a week before the South Carolina primary. They dropped by a Biden event, and we probably doubled the size of the crowd, Della Volpe acknowledged. After the event, Valerie Biden Owens, Biden's sister and a former Harvard Institute of Politics fellow, spoke to Della Volpe's students, then pulled him aside for his private assessment of the primary race. It's not looking too good, Della Volpe told her. Biden had just finished 4th in Iowa and 5th in New Hampshire. He was about to come in 2nd place in Nevada. Owens, who got to know Della Volpe well during her stint at Harvard, told him, John, you've got to talk to my brother because you were saying what my brother intuitively and instinctively knows. But you also have all this data here, she recounted in an interview with Politico. You relate the way that my brother relates, which is spoken like a true sister, but my brother speaks in stories. A turning point for the Biden and young voters came before Della Volpe joined the Biden campaign later that year. But Della Volpe pointed to it as a sign Biden knew how to reach them, saying, I hear you to Bernie Sanders supporters, especially young voters in March 2020. Those 3 simple words, Della Volpe wrote in his book, were everything millions of Zoomers were waiting to hear.
Wait a minute. Is he claiming that there was some youth shift to Biden before he secured the nomination?
I think that's what he's saying.
Is that the claim here?
Well, I mean, like he said, he said, I hear you.
I don't know if I trust your police work there, Lou, because you can't say anything once he has the nomination. It's meaningless. Where else are they going to go? They're not going to vote for Trump.
John reinforced to Joe that people just want to be heard, reinforcing Joe's natural way of doing things. Look, I mean, if Della Volpe,
if they just want to be heard, then why are you talking about doing anything about anything?
Yeah, exactly. Like if Della Volpe,
you should be talking about him building like a giant. You know what? This whole thing, if they were going to be consistent and not try to because I think they understand at the end of the day, even a fucking lobotomized DCite will read this and be like, really, just listening? That's kind of sounds dumb and a cop out. They're like they panic and they're like, oh no, initiatives, take songs. If they were really serious about this concept of politics, they should say that what Biden needs to do is go on tour in the fall with one of those old-timey ear horns and just lean towards the crowd and say, speak up, Sonny.
I think there is a way to at least, maybe retain the House. Probably not, but do decently well, right? And I think that way is something that, we only see hints of things and never any real follow-up with anything. But it would be, we saw Brandon take on Amazon at that pre-bedtime press conference. And okay, theoretically, we are going into the most theoretical of the theoretical thing that will never fucking happen because this is the Democrats. But if this was the summer of the fucking PRO Act, and he's going all over the place. He's going on tour just like us to talk about the PRO Act, and he's bringing out everyone's favorite all-stars, like Bernie, and putting public pressure on, and that's all they talk about: organized labor, Starbucks, fucking Amazon, everything. Then I could see that paying dividends, but that is not going to happen. I mean, I could see the Biden Democratic Party PRO Act summer and fall of rallies possibly coinciding with the based Republicans' proposal to withdraw from NATO. Those are both going to happen at the same time. They're equally likely.
I mean, just reading this article, I think a problem with a lot of these youth polls he's running is that like everyone he's talking to seems to have gone to Harvard.
Yeah.
So like for those motherfuckers, like I mean, yeah, just being listened to by powerful people is like all they want.
Yeah,
And
they
by the
just want
way,
a little therapeutic session, and they want they're themselves to feel like they're the center of the universe for a second.
and
Yeah,
and
they're
if
the only Americans who like give any stock into being heard.
and if Della Volpe's, if these polls and his sort of like youth whispering, if there's any truth to it all that young people just want to be heard and that's it, then young people deserve nothing, and will get and
Yeah.
continue to get nothing. And like that, honestly, they deserve it if that's the case. If they just want an old man to listen to them and say, "I hear you,"
Especially
then,
when you
okay.
know for a fact that it will immediately shoot from one ear to the other and be replaced by a story about the time that he got a hand job in a 57 DeSoto.
All right. Finishing out this article here, it says, it's to reinforce Joe's natural way of doing things, which is just telling stories. So, Scales, who organized on behalf of Elizabeth Warren during the presidential primary,
Ooh.
said Biden was not young voters' favorite primary candidate, which that was Elizabeth Warren, of course. But once Biden became the nominee, he honestly stepped up and started listening to young people, putting together the Bernie Biden unity task for listening to young people, putting together the Bernie Biden unity task for and moving on his climate agenda. The oldest presidential nominee in history eventually achieved historic support from young people in the general election. But
Yes,
now,
because he was running against Donald Trump.
but now, after 2 years of a stalled agenda, stalled agenda items important to young people, Democrats are worried about where young people are in terms of not feeling engaged or motivated right now, said Ben Tolchin, Democratic pollster, whose clients include Sanders and New York City Mayor Eric Adams. You have to give them a reason to show up now, Tolchin said. So that's the end of the article. But it's just like, I mean, all this listening, all this story stuff, and they're just saying young people, they feel frustrated that these agenda items that are important to them seem to be stalled out. Well, I mean, like, there's no amount of polling that can do away with the fact that the Democratic Party does not want to enact any of these policy items that are popular with young people. They do not, they're ideologically opposed to it, top to bottom.
They couldn't if they wanted to either, because there's no party. I mean, they can't, like, one of the biggest things that just destroyed Brandon's poll numbers is when they got rid of the child allowance. And
Yeah.
that was just because Joe Manchin actually believes in the deficit. And that's because there's no mechanism to make any fucking senator do anything they don't want to do. So they can't act as a party. So it doesn't matter what they want. And yes, it doesn't help that they don't want it either. But like they cannot do a coordinated policy push, especially with the slim margins they have. So they can't do anything. And they can listen, that's for sure. They can do that. That's free.
Yeah, have they tried employing a 53-year-old to listen?
I mean, if there's an October surprise for the midterms, it's going to be that they cancel some significant chunk of student debt, which is a thing that the White House could just do, which is untrue of all those other things, and a thing that wouldn't fuck off too many powerful institutions.
By the way, I wish I did not make my prediction before hearing that article.
Yeah, seriously.
Now I think every Democratic representative is going to be murdered, actually, in trials that they vote to be a part of. But yeah, like I'm hesitant and pessimistic on any student loan thing because it's like
not going to happen.
I mean, it's one of the greatest anti-inflation tools the federal government has ever had. You're not just going to get rid of that. I don't think. I could be wrong though. What if they do that and literally every Democrat loses? And I'm
could still happen,
wrong.
as I said. I mean, like, yay, student loans are good. Maybe I have something else that day that matters more to me than voting for some CIA agent.
Yeah. Is Abby Asperger going to win?
I
hope so. I love her. She's a firecracker. Yeah.
I gotta believe she's not going to get elected in that seat. We'll see, though.
I love her because, like, in 2018, when all these like shitty CIA agents got elected, they're like, "I want to thank Black women with an X and blah blah blah." And then the second they come within like 1 point of losing, they're like, "These fucking blacks and gays are ruining my life and are gonna make me fucking lose." Just takes one moment of frustration. You see the mask comes off.
God, just like reading that whole article, I just had the Spinal Tap song, "Listen to What the Flower People Say," just sort of wafting through my brain. Listen to what the flower people say. Shh. Listen, it's getting louder every day. And they're all screaming at Della Volpe. Hear us. Listen, tell us stories, Grandpa. Tell us the corn
That
pop story again.
for you, that may have been what you've experienced. For me, hearing that article, it was like Batman interrogating the Joker. They wouldn't tell me what the fucking point was. I couldn't find out where Rachel was, and I need to talk to her to find out what young voters want.